Elva Zona Heister was born in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, in 1873. Before meeting her future spouse Erasmus Shue, also known as Trout, in 1896, her life was a mystery. Surprisingly, only a year before their meeting, Greenbrier County records show that she gave birth to a male child, on November 29, 1895, when she was 22 years old, to an unskilled laborer named George Woldridge. Someone else, possibly family or an adoption, is thought to have raised Zona's illegitimate child. Apart from that, not much is known about Zona's life. Trout Shue, a good-looking drifter, arrived to town when Zona was 23, and found work as a blacksmith, which had been his father's job. However, in those days, simply moving to another county might offer a person a clean slate, and Zona's beau, unbeknownst to her, had a terrible past that would not be revealed until after her sad death. Zona had no idea she was his third or fourth wife, and in her ignorance of his previous life, she fell in love with the new blacksmith, and accepted his marriage proposal. Mary Jane Heister, her mother, was strongly opposed to the marriage from the start, reporting an unusual feeling and an initial disliking of Shue. A Greenbrier County neighborhood youngster made a surprising find on a January afternoon. On January 23, 1897, he found Elva Heister's body, laying on her back at the bottom of the stairs, her feet extended out together and one hand on her stomach, almost as if posed. Elva's husband had sent the boy to see whether she needed anything from the market before he returned home from work. Shue had just been married to Heister for 3 months, and was working on location as a blacksmith. When the scared boy discovered Heister's lifeless body, he hurried to tell his mother, who immediately contacted the local doctor, Dr. Knapp. Shue had already returned home and cleaned and prepared the body for burial, dressed her in a high-neck garment and placing a veil over her head, by the time Dr. Knapp arrived to examine the body. Shue had taken on that responsibility, which was generally entrusted to the town's women, according to Dr. Knapp. Shue stayed with the body during the examination, sobbing and cradling his wife's head. Dr. Knapp attempted to examine Zona's neck, but Shue became enraged and forcefully responded, prompting Dr. Knapp to terminate the examination. Zona's cause of death was initially stated as everlasting faint, but it was later amended to childbirth, because he had been treating her for female issues before she died. It was never established that she was indeed pregnant. Heister's remains were brought to her childhood home, on Little Sewell Mountain, for her funeral not long after. Throughout the event, many began to notice Shue acting strangely. He did not allow anyone near the body. He was preoccupied with Heister's head and neck, covering her in a scarf that didn't match her clothing. He claimed it was her favorite scarf, and piling pillows about her head, claiming he wanted her to rest comfortably. Except for Elva's mother, Mary Jane Heister, most of the guests assumed it was grief. Shue had never been Heister's favorite, and she was certain that he was responsible for her daughter's death, despite a lack of evidence proving so. For several weeks, she prayed every evening in the hopes of receiving some form of response. Heister's prayers were finally fulfilled a month after her daughter's funeral. Elva's ghost had appeared in her dreams 4 nights in a row, accusing Shue of abusing her, telling her that Shue had murdered her by strangling her and breaking her neck, and to prove this, the ghost turned her head around until it was facing backwards. Shue was furious when he arrived home from work, according to the ghost, since he felt Elva hadn't cooked any meat for dinner. After the 4th dream, Heister went to see John Alfred Preston, the county prosecutor. Preston was doubtful when she told him about her nightmares and what the ghost had said, but he decided to follow up with Dr. Knapp. Preston decided to reopen the case after learning from the doctor that Shue had been violent, and refused to allow him examine Evelyn's head and neck. By this time, the general consensus was that Zona had been murdered by her husband. On February 22, a 3-hour autopsy was done in the town's 1-room schoolhouse. Shue was obligated to be present by law, and he was furious about the test. He was arrested for her murder 2 weeks later. The discovery was made that the neck was fractured and the windpipe smashed, according to the autopsy report, which was based on the conclusions of the 3 doctors who examined the body. The traces of fingers on her throat indicated that she had been suffocated. Between the 1st and 2nd vertebrae, the neck was displaced. The ligaments had been ripped and ruptured. The windpipe had been crushed in front of the neck. Shu was imprisoned in Lewisburg jail, pending his trial. The facts about his past became apparent at that point. According to several reports, he had already been married multiple times. Alice Estalin Cutlip, his first wife, divorced him while he was serving a 2-year sentence for stealing a horse. She sought a divorce based on allegations of mistreatment. They had one daughter, Gerda Shu. Lucy Ann Tritt, Shu's second wife, died 8 months after their marriage, allegedly after falling and hitting her head on a rock. Despite the fact that this was suspicious, he was never charged with the crime. When Zona became his third or possibly fourth wife, he was barely 30 years old. The case went to trial, and lasted 8 days. The prosecution's key witness was Mary Jane Heister. Preston was hesitant of bringing up the ghost account because the defense may consider it speculative. Shu's counsel, on the other hand, opted to interrogate Heister about her dreams during cross-examination in order to show that she was unstable. However, the strategy backfired because the jurors seemed to trust Heister's claim. Shu's poor performance on the stand in his own defense didn't help matters. Shu's statement left an unpleasant effect on the crowd, according to a Greenbrier newspaper story. On July 11, the jury debated for about 1 hour before finding Shu guilty of first-degree murder, and condemning him to life in prison. The deputy intervened and saved Shu by hiding him in a local woods, when a local mob wanted to hang him, but he did not live long after that, dying 3 years later in March of 1900, at the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville during a prison epidemic. At Tom's Run Cemetery, he was buried in an unmarked grave. Mary Jane Heister never changed her story about her daughter's ghostly visitation, which she claimed never happened again. In September of 1916, Mrs. Heister passed away. On US Highway 60, in front of the Sam Black Church, there is a marker commemorating the event.